For 19 long years, Ilara Vance was the ghost in the halls of the Obsidian Fang Pack. They called her the Runt, the Wolfless, a broken thing. Every day she scrubbed the marble floors until her hands were raw and cracked. Every day she endured the sneers and the cruel whispers. She was the pack's living shame, an omega who had never heard the voice of her inner beast, orphaned and left to the mercy of those who saw her as less than nothing. But deep within her silent soul, a secret slumbered, a legacy buried so deep not even she remembered its name. Her silence was not weakness, it was a seal, waiting for the right moment to shatter. Tonight, the grand hallway of the pack house buzzed with a different energy. It was the eve of the winter solstice gathering, where alliances were forged and fates were decided. The air smelled of pine, beeswax, and the sharp, metallic tang of ambition. Ilara was on her knees, as usual, working a stubborn scuff mark into submission. A polished leather boot came down on her fingers, grinding them into the cold stone. Ilara gasped, biting back a cry of pain. "Look at you, a stain on the floor, cleaning a stain on the floor." The voice was sweet poison. Celine, the beta's daughter, loomed over her, a vision of cruel beauty. "Don't even think of slinking off to watch the ceremony, little mouse. Alpha Kale wants all the ceremonial silver polished in the great hall, every last piece." Ilara's heart sank. "But the gathering starts soon. We were promised we could watch." "Watch?" Celine's laugh was a sharp bark. "You think you deserve to gaze upon the elite? You're a genetic dead end, Ilara. Be grateful Alpha Kale lets you breathe our air." With a final contemptuous smirk, Celine kicked over the bucket of soapy water, sending gray suds across the freshly cleaned floor. "Now you have more to clean, and if I see your pathetic face near the ballroom, I'll have you thrown to the border patrol." As Celine sauntered away, Ilara fought the hot tears of humiliation. Crying was a luxury she couldn't afford. Weakness was a death sentence here. She was the orphan of a low-ranking guard and a human woman, or so the story went. Their deaths in a rogue attack were the tragedy that had shackled her to this life of servitude under Alpha Kale, a man whose icy disdain for her was the only constant she knew. Yet lately, a strange, terrifying pull had begun in her chest whenever he was near. A heat, a magnetism she couldn't explain. She prayed to the moon goddess it wasn't what she feared. An omega like her made it to an alpha like him? It would be a curse. Finishing her tasks in a numb daze, Ilara retreated to her attic closet. She changed into a simple, faded blue dress scavenged years ago and slipped into the hidden servant passages. She had to see. She had to know. The sight from the ventilation grate stole her breath. The ballroom was a sea of silk and jewels, of powerful wolves and intoxicating pheromones. And there, on the raised dais, sat Alpha Kale Volker. He was devastatingly handsome, with dark hair and eyes like a winter storm, swirling a glass of amber liquor as Celine whispered in his ear. At that exact moment, as if summoned by her desperate gaze, Kale looked up. His dark gray eyes locked onto the dark grate in the shadows. Ilara's heart slammed against her ribs. A searing, white-hot pain branded her chest, so violent she cried out and clutched the metal grate. Down below, Kale's glass slipped from his hand and shattered. He stood, his own hand pressed to his heart, his face a mask of shock and horror. He shoved Celine aside, his head snapping up, nostrils flaring as he scented the air. "Mate," he breathed. The word, quiet as it was, echoed through the sudden silence like thunder. Ilara's blood ran cold. "No, please no." "Find her." Kale's roar shook the very crystals in the chandeliers. "Bring her to me now." The The guards found her easily, dragging her from the vent like a trapped animal. They hauled her through the kitchens and shoved her through the ballroom doors. She stumbled, falling to her knees on the polished floor before the entire assembled court. 500 pairs of eyes burned into her. The silence was a physical weight. "Get up." Kale's voice was a blade of ice. Trembling, Ilara rose. The pull was an agony now, a screaming instinct to submit, to go to him. She forced her head up. Kale stood 5 feet away, not with wonder, but with pure, unadulterated fury. He looked at her worn dress, her messy hair, as if she were a foul insult. "You," he spat, "the mute little cleaner. Is this some jest?" "My name is Ilara," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I know what you are," he growled, stepping closer. The bond flared, begging for connection, but he fought it with visible revulsion. "You are a defect, a wolfless omega. You are nothing." A wave of murmurs swept the crowd. Rejection was taboo, but this was a scandal. "Kale, please," Ilara begged, the pain in her chest throbbing in time with his rage. "I didn't choose this." "But I have a choice." Kale's voice rose, filled with arrogant pride. "An alpha needs a Luna of strength, of lineage, not a broken vessel." He took a final, decisive breath, his eyes turning to stone. "I, Alpha Kale Volker of the Obsidian Fang, reject you, Ilara Vance, as my mate and Luna." The words were a physical blow. Ilara doubled over, a silent scream tearing at her throat as a part of her soul ripped in two. "I accept your rejection," she gasped, completing the severance. But Kale wasn't finished. "Guards, escort her to the border. She is banished. I will not have this mistake haunting my halls." Banished? In the dead of winter? It was a death sentence. As the guards grabbed her arms, a new sensation erupted. Not heartbreak, but a burning heat in her bones, like lava in her veins. A sound echoed in her mind, ancient and furious. "They dare." The guards threw her out onto the frozen steps. The heavy doors slammed shut, locking her in the howling dark. Ilara curled into a ball, the cold biting her skin, but inside she was burning alive. Her bones screamed, snapping and reshaping. She tried to scream, but the sound that tore from her throat was a roar. Inside the ballroom, the music died. A deep, vibrating hum shook the glasses on the tables. Kale froze, staring at the doors. Boom! Something massive hit the reinforced oak from outside. Boom! The wood splintered. Crash! The doors exploded inward. Through the swirling snow and debris, a creature stepped into the light. It was a wolf, but not any ever seen. It stood nearly 7 feet at the shoulder, its fur not gray or brown, but pure, radiant silver. Its eyes glowed with molten gold. An aura of ancient, terrifying power rolled off it in waves, forcing every omega and beta in the room to their knees in instinctual submission. The silver wolf lowered its massive head. Its golden eyes found Kale, and a growl built in its chest, so deep it cracked the marble at its paws. From the shadows of the upper balcony, a slow, deliberate clap echoed. All eyes turned. A man leaned against the railing, dressed in black, a ghost from legends. Silas Thorne, the Shadow King, ruler of all packs, unseen for a decade. He vaulted over the railing, landing silently between the beast and the terrified Alpha. He didn't look at Kale. He looked at the silver wolf with awe and profound recognition. "At last, I have found you," the Shadow King whispered, bowing his head. The silence in the shattered ballroom was absolute, broken only by the moan of the winter wind through the ruined doorway. The silver wolf, Ilara, stood like a statue carved from moonlight, her golden eyes locked on the king who bowed before her. The sheer power radiating from her form was a physical pressure, a weight of centuries that made the air difficult to breathe. Slowly, the massive beast's legs began to tremble. The explosive rage that had shattered her prison was fading, leaving behind a hollow, catastrophic exhaustion. The shimmering silver form wavered at the edges. Silas Thorne moved. He was a blur of black, shrugging off his heady trench coat as he closed the distance. "Let go," he murmured, his voice a low rumble meant only for her. "I have you." The wolf collapsed. In midair, the magic unraveled, a symphony of crunching bone and retracting fur. When the figure landed on the cold marble, it was Ilara, small and shivering, curled naked on the floor. Silas draped his coat over her, cocooning her trembling body, and gathered her into his arms as if she were made of glass. "Unhand her!" The command was sharp, desperate. Kael Volkar stepped forward, his pride warring with the primal fear still chilling his blood. "You have no right." Silas turned. His eyes, which had held awe a moment before, were now pits of endless night. The temperature in the room dropped sharply. "Your pack." The words were soft, deadly. "I heard you banish her. I heard you reject her. I heard you declare her nothing before your entire court. You do not get to change your mind simply because you misjudged the treasure in your dirt." Kael's jaw worked. "It was a mistake. She had no scent, no wolf. The rejection is void. The bond can be annulled. She is still my Luna." "The bond is shattered." Silas's voice cracked through the hall. "You broke it for your pride. She is no one's property." He held Ilara closer, her head lolling against his shoulder. "By the laws of the old code, a banished wolf found under my protection falls under my sovereignty. She answers to the crown now." Celine, finding her voice from behind a pillar, spat. "She's a monster! Look what she did! She'll kill us all!" Silas's gaze snapped at her. Celine choked, clawing at her throat as if an invisible hand squeezed it. "Speak again," Silas whispered, the promise of violence chilling the air, "and you will be silenced forever." He addressed the stunned crowd, his tone leaving no room for argument. "This gathering is over. Alpha Kael, your territory is now under royal investigation for the suppression and abuse of a royal bloodline. If I find one scar on her that came from your negligence," he let the threat hang, heavier than iron. "Guards!" From the shadows, 12 figures dropped from the balcony. The Onyx Guard, the king's personal sentinels, clad in matte black armor, formed an impenetrable circle around Silas and Ilara. "We leave now." He turned and walked into the blizzard, leaving the ruins of the Obsidian Fang's pride behind him. Kael watched them go, the intoxicating, changed scent of milk, honey, and ozone searing his senses. A possessive snarl built in his throat. "She was mine first," he whispered to the frozen dark. Ilara awoke to the scent of sandalwood and the clean, crisp smell of mountain air. She was warm, buried in silken sheets softer than anything she'd ever dreamed of. Memory returned in a painful rush. The rejection, the shift, the silver wolf, the king. She bolted upright, pain flaring in her newly knit bones. "Easy," the voice came from the fireplace. Silas Thorne sat in a large armchair, watching her. He looked less like a warlord here, in a simple sweater, though the scars on his neck told of a violent past. "Your body is still healing from its first true shift." "Where am I?" Ilara's voice was a rasp. "The Northern Citadel, my home. You are a guest here, Ilara, not a prisoner." "A guest?" She laughed, a brittle sound. "Why? What am I?" "You are the last of the Argentum line, the Silver Wolves, the original rulers of our kind, thought lost to time." He stood, pouring her a glass of water, and showed her a silver locket engraved with a crescent moon pierced by a lightning bolt. This is your crest. It was found with you. The old Alpha hid the truth, and your guardians died protecting you from fanatics called the purebloods, who believe your line must be extinguished. Ilara's mind reeled. A cleaning girl? A royal lineage? It was absurd. What do you want from me? The purebloods still exist. Kale's pride is wounded. He will come for you, claiming a mistake. You are a weapon with no safety, Ilara. Your power could level mountains or destroy cities if you cannot control it. He extended his hand. I can teach you. I can help you claim your rightful place. Or I can give you a new identity and send you to the human world to hide. But your wolf will never be silent. She will eventually drive you mad. Ilara looked at his hand. The pull she felt toward him was nothing like the desperate, painful need she'd felt for Kale. This was a challenge, a hum of resonant power. She thought of a lifetime of kneeling, of Celine's sneer, of Kale's icy eyes condemning her to death. No more, the wolf inside growled. She took his hand. Teach me. A rare, genuine smile touched Silas's lips. First, we find you proper clothes. The Council of Elders felt your awakening. They are arriving. They will want to see the truth for themselves. Before Ilara could process the terror of facing the ancient, ruthless council, a piercing siren wailed through the citadel. Red light flashed in the corridor. Silas touched his earpiece, his expression hardening. Report! Perimeter breach, my king. The Obsidian Fang pack surrounds the south gate. Alpha Kale demands an audience. He claims we have kidnapped her Luna. Silas looked at Ilara. It seems he is not one to accept consequences. Ilara swung her legs out of bed, wrapping herself in a black silk robe. The fear was being swallowed by a cold, steady anger. She met Silas's gaze. Let him in, she said, her voice firm. Let him see exactly what he threw away. The throne room of the northern citadel was a testament to raw, unforgiving power. Hewn from the heart of the mountain itself, its walls were sheer black granite, glittering with embedded minerals that caught the torchlight like frozen stars. At the room's end, atop a dais of steps carved from glacial ice, sat the obsidian throne, and before it, Ilara stood. She was no longer in rags or a borrowed robe. She wore a gown of deep twilight blue, high-collared and severe, its velvet folds hinting at a newfound, unshakable strength. Her pale hair was braided tightly back, a warrior's plait. Silas stood beside the throne, a silent, protective pillar of shadow. Open the gates, Silas commanded, his voice echoing in the vast space. The immense iron doors, etched with runes of warding, groaned inward. Kale Volker strode in, his entrance meant to project dominance, but he looked frayed. His eyes were red-shot, his usual impeccable appearance marred by the desperation rolling off him in waves. He stopped short when he saw Ilara. The breath left his lungs in a quiet, stunned rush. The ragged urchin was gone. In her place stood a woman of stark, ethereal beauty and palpable power. The sight struck him with a force more brutal than her earlier transformation. Ilara, he breathed, the name a plea. He took an impulsive step forward. That is far enough, Volker. Silas's voice was a whip crack in the frozen air. Kale's gaze jerked to the king, hatred igniting. You stole her! You exploited her confusion! You exiled her, Ilara stated, her calm voice carrying to the farthest corner. You renounced all claim before witnesses. I have no alpha but the one I choose. Kale's mask of arrogance slipped into something more manipulative, more desperate. Ilara, please, the pressure. The pack expects a strong Luna. When I couldn't sense your wolf, I thought it was a defect, a sickness. I acted to protect our people. It was a terrible error, but my intention... was to protect your pride, Ilara finished for him, descending one step. The movement was regal, effortless. You didn't just reject me, you let your beta's daughter humiliate me. You condemned me to a frozen death. Do not paint yourself a hero now that you see my value. The rejection is void, Kale insisted, his voice rising. You hadn't shifted. The moon goddess's magic was incomplete. The bond can be restored. You are the Luna of the obsidian fang. He extended his hand, a gesture that had once commanded obedience. Come home. With your power and my leadership, we would be unstoppable. I will cast Celine out. You will have everything. Ilara looked at his offered hand. For a heartbeat, the ghost of the girl who dreamed of belonging whispered. Then she felt the phantom bites of the winter stone against her cheek. I am home, she said, turning her back on him and walking up to stand level with Silas. Kale's control shattered. A snarl ripped from his throat, his canines lengthening. You are mine! She belongs to no one. A new voice, ancient and dry as desert bones, cut through the tension. From a shadowed archway, 5 figures emerged, clad in identical gray robes, the Council of Elders. Their presence sucked the warmth from the room. The lead elder, Mordrin, pushed back his hood, revealing a face like weathered parchment and eyes that were filmed over, yet saw too much. We have borne witness to the awakening, Mordrin intoned, his sightless gaze sweeping the room before settling on Ilara. The Argentum blood sings again. A matter of law, however, remains. Kale bowed deeply, relief flooding him. Elders, I have claimed her as my mate under the law of first rights. You renounced her under the law of strength, Mordrin countered, his voice devoid of emotion. Yet your point has a technical merit. A rejection before a first shift, the moon goddess's magic is in a state of ambiguity. The magic is conflicted. Silas took a step forward, a predator's grace in his movement. There is no conflict. She stays. Mordrin raised a skeletal hand. Peace, Shadow King. The old laws bind even the crown. A disputed bond, a contested claim. There is only one path to resolution. A dreadful silence filled the hall. Ilara felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ice throne. Mordrin's blind eyes seemed to pin her where she stood. A trial of blood, to yield or to the death. Kale's smile returned, cruel and confident. He was a champion fighter, bred for battle. I will accept. I will fight for what is mine. And who, Mordrin asked, turning his head, shall champion the silver wolf? She may choose one to fight in her stead. Silas was already moving, his jacket discarded. I will end this. No. Ilara's voice was quiet but absolute. Silas froze, looking at her with fierce concern. Ilara, he is a seasoned killer. You had your wolf day. Ilara looked at Kale. She saw the smug certainty in his eyes. He saw a prize to be re-won, a possession to be reclaimed. He did not see a threat. He saw the weak Omega. She turned to the council. I choose no champion. The gasps in the room were audible. I will fight him myself. Kale's laugh was genuine, incredulous. You? You'll get yourself killed. Then forfeit, Ilara said, her violet eyes now flecked with stubborn gold. Kale's mirth vanished, replaced with cold fury. So be it. I'll remind you of your place. Mordrin gave a slow, grave nod. The challenge is set, at dawn, in the circle of ice. As the elders filed out and Kale cast one last burning look at Ilara before striding away, Silas moved to her side. This is a mistake, he said, his voice low and strained. If you fight for me, Ilara whispered, meeting his stormy gaze, I will always be the Omega needing saving. I must do this, not for him, for me. Silas searched her face, seeing not the scared girl from the ballroom, but the iron-willed queen in the making. He saw the resolve and the terrifying, untested powers simmering beneath her skin. He gave a single, reluctant nod. "Then we have until dawn to ensure you are not slaughtered. Come, the training grounds await." The training hall of the northern citadel was a vast, echoing chamber deep within the mountain, lit by glowing crystals set into the walls. The air was cold and still, smelling of stone and old sweat. For Ilara, it was a world away from attic closets and soapy buckets. Silas stood before her, having changed into simple, flexible training gear. "The fight will not be fair," he began, his voice echoing slightly. "Kale will not fight to subdue. He will fight to dominate, to break your will. He expects you to be untrained, to rely on brute force. Your greatest weapon right now is his arrogance. Your second greatest weapon is your instinct." "Instinct?" Ilara asked, flexing her hands. They felt different, stronger, but unfamiliar. "Your wolf is ancient. She knows things you do not. She has battle memory in her blood. You must learn to listen to her, to merge with her, not just let her take over." He gestured to the open space. "Shift for me." Ilara closed her eyes, reaching for the simmering power inside. The shift was faster this time, less catastrophic. One moment she was standing, the next, the silver wolf stood on the stone floor, magnificent and ethereal. The connection was clearer now. She felt the wolf's mind, not as a separate voice, but as an extension of her own, filled with primal confidence and a deep protective love for its human half. "Good," Silas said, unflinching before the majestic beast. "Now, feel the room, not with your eyes, with your spirit. Tell me what you sense." The wolf lowered its head. Ilara, through its senses, felt the world expand. She felt the steady, powerful thrum of Silas's life force, a dark, steady flame. She felt the slow drip of water somewhere in the rock, the scurry of a small creature far in a tunnel, the distant heartbeat of a guard 3 floors above. "I feel everything," her voice echoed in her own mind, the wolf's jaw moving slightly. "Now, find the weakest point in this wall." Silas pointed to a solid-looking section of granite. The wolf's golden eyes scanned the stone. It wasn't about sight, it was about sensing a minute crack, a hairline fracture in the stone's integrity, a place where the mountain's own weight created a fault. She felt it, a faint, brittle line of energy near the floor. She pointed a paw. Silas walked over and placed his hand on the spot. "Correct. A natural fault. Your enemy will have faults too, not in stone, but in spirit, in strategy. Kale is proud. He attacks head-on with overwhelming force. He expects you to meet his strength with yours. Do not." He shifted then. It was a soundless, seamless transformation. One moment he was a man, the next a massive wolf of pure shadow. His fur was so dark it seemed to drink the light, and his eyes were chips of gleaming obsidian. He was nearly as large as her silver form, but where she radiated light and ancient power, he radiated silent, lethal menace. "Attack me," his voice echoed in her mind, a direct telepathic link formed between their shifted selves. Hesitant, Ilara lunged, mimicking what she thought an attack should be. Silas didn't meet her. He flowed around her, a wisp of smoke, his body brushing against her to unbalance her, a gentle nip at her hind leg that was more lesson than bite. "Too direct. You are not a battering ram. You are a storm. Unpredictable. Use your speed. Your smaller size in human form is an asset he will discount. Use it." They trained for hours. He taught her to use her opponent's momentum against them, to feint and dodge, to strike at tendons and pressure points instead of aiming for killing blows she wasn't ready to make. He forced her to shift back and forth until the transition was as easy as breathing, until she could summon just her claws or her fangs without a full change. Exhausted, drenched in sweat, Ilara finally collapsed on a training mat in her human form. Silas shifted back and handed her a water skin, sitting beside her. "You learn quickly," he said, a note of respect in his voice. "The old blood remembers." "What if it's not enough?" she asked, the fear finally creeping in as the adrenaline faded. What if his arrogance isn't enough of a fault? Silas was quiet for a long moment. "Then you will discover a depth of power you have not yet touched. The trial is not just about beating Kale, Ilara. It is about you accepting every part of who you are, the girl who scrubbed the floors, the Omega who endured, and the queen who will rise." He looked at her, his gaze intense. "Do not fight the silver wolf. Become her." Later, in the quiet of her luxurious chambers, Ilara couldn't sleep. The words of the council elder haunted her. The goddess's magic is conflicted. She walked to the balcony, looking out over the moonlit, snow-blanketed peaks. Was there a shred of truth to it? Had the bond with Kale left a phantom thread? As if summoned by her thought, a familiar, aching pull twisted in her chest. It was faint, but unmistakable, an echo of the mate bond. She gasped, clutching the balcony railing. Across the dark expanse of the Citadel grounds, in a guest tower, a light was on. She could feel him there, Kale, yearning, angry, claiming. The silver wolf within her stirred, a growl of possessive denial echoing in her soul. But beneath the growl was a flicker of confusion. The laws of their world were ancient and complex, a weave of magic and biology. A soft knock came at her chamber door. It was Lysander, the elderly, kind-faced steward of the Citadel. He bowed, holding a small, ornate wooden box. "A gift, my lady, from the royal archives. The king thought you should see it before the dawn." Inside the box, on a bed of black velvet, lay a brittle, ancient scroll. Ilara carefully unrolled it. The script was faded, but she could read the title, "On the Nature of the Argentum Bond." Her eyes scanned the text, her heart pounding faster with each line. It spoke of the Argentum wolves, of their mates not being chosen by simple scent or chance, but a resonance of power and purpose. It stated that a forced or mistaken bond to another before the Argentum's awakening could create a shadow tether, a magical knot that could cloud judgment and drain strength until formally severed by ritual or by death. The final line made her blood run cold. A shadow tether left unresolved may be exploited by one of dark intent, creating a puppet of great power. Ilara dropped the scroll as if burned. Kale's desperate claim, his insistence on the bond's validity, was it pride, or was it something more? Did he know? Could he feel this shadow tether and seek to use it? The moon glinted off the snow, cold and merciless. The trial at dawn was no longer about proving her strength. It was about cutting the last chain that bound her to a past of weakness. She had to win. She had to sever everything. But as she looked toward the distant light in Kale's tower, a new, more terrifying hook embedded itself in her mind. What if winning the trial wasn't enough to cut the tether? What ritual would be required? And what would Kale do if he realized the true puppeteering power he might still hold over the last silver wolf? Dawn in the mountains was a brutal, beautiful affair. The sun clawed its way over the razor-edged peaks, staining the snowfields first pink, then a searing, bloody orange. In the natural amphitheater known as the Circle of Ice, the frozen lake at its center gleamed like a vast, pale mirror, waiting for the day's crimson offering. The stands, carved into the surrounding rock, were packed. Silas's court, clad in furs and solemn expressions, filled the northern side. The Council of Elders sat in a solemn row under a canopy of gray silk. On the southern side, Kale's delegation, a smaller, more aggressive group, clustered together. Celine sat at the front, her face pale, but her eyes burning with a vicious hope. Ilara stood at the northern entrance tunnel. She wore the flexible black tactical suit, her feet bare on the icy stone. The cold was a distant whisper against the fire in her veins. Silas stood beside her, a solid, silent presence. "Remember," he said, his voice low, "he will come at you hard and fast. Use the first minute to learn his rhythm. Your wolf will see it." Alara nodded, her eyes fixed on the far tunnel. Cale emerged. He was shirtless despite the cold, muscles coiled, his body a map of old battle scars. He stretched with a predator's languid grace, his eyes finding Alara immediately. He didn't look worried. He looked hungry. Elder Mordrin stood, his voice magically amplified to fill the valley. "The challenged has chosen to champion herself. The law is clear. No weapons. Shift is permitted. The contest ends at yield, unconsciousness, or death. Let the will of the moon goddess prevail." He paused, his blind gaze seeming to sweep over both combatants. "Begin." Cale did not shift. A cruel smirk touched his lips. He would humiliate her in human form first, a public display of his dominance. He charged, a blur of motion across the ice, his fist aimed not to kill, but to bruise, to shame, a backhand aimed at her face. Alara didn't block. She dropped, her movement fluid and impossibly fast. As his hand whistled over her head, she drove her own fist upward into his diaphragm. Oof! The sound was a satisfying puff of frozen air. Cale stumbled back, eyes wide with shock. The blow hadn't been skilled, but the power behind it was staggering, a raw surge of Argentum's strength. "Not so weak," Alara stated, her voice steady. Rage, hot and immediate, flushed Cale's face. With a roar, he let the shift take him. Bones cracked, fur erupted, and in moments, a massive jet-black wolf stood snarling on the ice, saliva dripping from his exposed fangs. He wasted no time. He lunged, a killing leap aimed for her throat. Alara didn't close her eyes this time. She embraced the shift. It was a silent explosion of light. One heartbeat she was a woman, the next the silver wolf stood, larger, sleeker, a creature of myth made flesh. Cale crashed into her. It was like a wave hitting a cliff. Alara absorbed the impact, her paws scoring the ice but not sliding back. She twisted, her jaws snapping for his shoulder. Her teeth found purchase. Cale yelped, a genuine sign of pain, and thrashed wildly, his claws raking her flank. Hot blood, shocking red against her silver fur, welled up. The pain was sharp, clarifying. It fed her focus. She shook him once, violently, and threw him. His massive body skidded across the ice with a terrible scraping sound. He scrambled up, his earlier confidence replaced by wary fear. He began to circle, looking for an opening. His eyes flicked, just for an instant, towards the stands, towards Celine. Alara's enhanced senses caught the minute movement. She saw Celine's hand slip into the sleeve of her coat. She saw the glint of metal, a forbidden weapon, a dart. "Alara, left!" Silas's psychic warning shot into her mind, but she was already moving. She didn't dodge. As the small, poison-tipped dart flew, the silver wolf's paw came up in a blur, swatting it from the air. It clattered harmlessly on the ice. Alara turned her molten gaze at Celine, and a roar of pure, ancient fury erupted from her chest, shaking snow from the pines. Cale used the distraction. He lunged again, not for her throat, but for her wounded hind leg, sinking his teeth deep. Agony lanced through her, but with it came a cold, crystalline fury. She didn't fight against his grip. She rolled with it, using her greater weight to crush him beneath her as they tumbled. In an instant, she was on top, her claws pinning his shoulders to the ice, her jaws hovering a hair's breadth from his exposed throat. His frantic struggles slowed. He was trapped, beaten. The silver wolf's dominance was absolute, a psychic wave that stifled his own wolf spirit. Kill him. The instinct was a primal drumbeat. End the threat. Alara tightened her jaw. She could feel the frantic pulse of his life under her teeth. One bite, one crunch, and the shadow, the tether, the past would be gone forever. She looked into his eyes. Past the fear, she saw the petty, prideful man. the boy who had been told he was a king and never learned to be anything else. Killing him would be mercy. It would grant him a warrior's end. It would also make her a murderer in the eyes of many, and it would leave the Shadow Tether's end a mystery. With a force of will that shook her entire being, she unclenched her jaw. She released his throat and instead placed a heavy paw on his muzzle, pressing his head down into the unforgiving ice. Submit. The command was not sound, it was a psychic imperative, a wave of will that brooked no argument. Kale's body went limp. A high, pathetic whine escaped him. His tail tucked. He exposed his neck completely, the ultimate sign of surrender. It was over. Alara steps back, shifting as she did. She stood, naked and bloody, steam rising from her skin in the cold air, her chest heaving. Silas was there instantly, wrapping her in a thick fur cloak. "I yield," Cale gasped, shifting back, clutching his bleeding shoulder. His eyes were glazed with shock and humiliation. She is yours." "She was never a thing to be owned," Silas growled, holding Alara upright. But Alara wasn't listening. A new fire was igniting in her belly, different from battle lust, more insidious. It was a deep, pooling heat that made her skin oversensitive and her head swim. A sweet, heavy, maddening scent began to bloom from her. Honey, ozone, and wild roses. The scent hit the stands like a physical force. Unmated males, guards, dignitaries, Kale's own warriors, stiffened. A low collective growl rumbled through the amphitheater. Elder Mordrin stood, his ancient face grim. "The trial has forced her cycle. The silver wolf is in prime fertility. She calls for a mate." The biological pull was overwhelming. Alara clutched at Silas's arm, the world tilting. "Silas, it burns." Silas's own control strained, his pupils dilated, his jaw clenched. He looked at the crowd of wolves now staring at Alara with undisguised hunger. With a snarl that promised death, he swept Alara fully into his arms. "On guard! Clear the path!" he roared. "The first one to step forward dies." He didn't wait. He ran, a streak of shadow and fur, back towards the citadel, the obsidian guard forming a bristling, violent perimeter around them. Behind, the circle of ice descended into a snarling, chaotic mess of instinct and rivalry. In Silas's arms, Alara buried her face against his neck, his scent of sandalwood and frost, the only anchor in the storm of heat consuming her. "Don't let them. Please." "I swear it," he gritted out, his voice thick with a protective fury that mirrored her inner fire. He kicked open a private side entrance into the citadel, sealing them in a stone corridor. But the sanctuary was short-lived. Before they could take another step, a deafening explosion rocked the mountain. The walls trembled, dust and stone fragments raining from the ceiling. Alarms, different from the perimeter sirens, deeper, more urgent, began to blare. Silas's comms crackled. "My king, breach at the northern vault. It's not the obsidian fang, it's the purebloods. They're inside the walls." Silas froze, torn between the woman burning up in his arms and the enemy violating his stronghold. Alara pushed against his chest, the heat in her eyes mixing with a new, battle-cold clarity. She took a shivering breath, forcing the overwhelming biological imperative down, locking it away with sheer will. The effort was agony, but she met his gaze. "The citadel comes first," she said, her voice strained but decisive. "Give me a weapon." The Shadow King looked at his silver wolf, saw the queen pushing through the fever, and felt a pride so fierce it eclipsed everything else. He nodded, setting her on her feet, but keeping a supporting arm around her. "Lysander," he yelled down the hall, "bring the queen her armor, and her sword." The game had changed. The trial was over. The war had just begun. Chaos was a living thing in the stone halls of the citadel. The scent of cordite and charred rock warred with the lingering, maddening sweetness of Alara's heat. But she shoved the biological tempest into a deep, locked vault within her mind. There was only the now, the enemy within the gates. Lysander arrived, breathless, followed by two guards carrying a chest. Inside was not the polished ceremonial armor Alara might have expected, but pieces of sleek, matte gray alloy, etched with faint, glowing silver runes, ancient argentum craftsmanship pulled from the deepest vaults. As the guards helped her into it, the armor seemed to sigh and mold itself to her form, light as silk, yet harder than steel. Silas belted a sword around her waist, its blade pale as moonstone, its hilt wrapped in silver wire. The Onyx purebloods, they are a cult. They believe the Silver Wolf line was an abomination, that its power corrupted the purity of wolf blood. They have hunted your kind to near extinction. They must have felt your awakening as we did. And they've come to finish the job? Alara finished, her hand resting on the unfamiliar weight of the sword. The metal felt warm, humming in time with her pulse. They have never dared attack a royal seat directly. They are fanatics, but not fools. Something has changed. Someone has emboldened them. They burst into the grand hall to find a scene from a nightmare. The majestic space was a battleground. Silas's guards fought with disciplined ferocity against attackers clad in featureless silver masks and gray uniforms. But it was the sight in the center that made Alara's blood freeze. Kale Volker and his obsidian fang warriors were not fighting with the purebloods, they were fighting against them. Kale, his shoulder bandaged from the trial, was a whirlwind of fury, his black wolf form tearing into a masked soldier. For a heartbeat, their eyes met across the carnage. His held a desperate, furious apology. "Kale, behind you!" Kale's voice, hoarse and strained, shouted a warning a second before Silas spun her aside. A pureblood lunged from the shadows, a curved dagger aimed for her back. Silas's own dagger took the attacker in the throat before he hit the ground. "Watch your own back, Volker," Kale yelled back, more from shock than gratitude. Why was he here? Why was he fighting? "Don't flatter yourself. I'm defending my pack's honor, not you," Kale snarled, even as he moved to intercept another pureblood, making a line for her. The contradiction was glaring. A dry, rasping laugh cut through the clash of steel and snarls. On the upper balcony overlooking the hall stood a tall, slender figure in ornate silver robes, his mask more elaborate than the others, carved into a serene, smiling facade. In his hands was a staff topped with a pulsating violet crystal that throbbed with a sickly light. The mongrel king and the abomination queen united at last, the figure called, his voice amplified and distorted. How poetic. I am Valerius, first blade of the pure, and I am here to cleanse the world of your tainted light. He raised the staff and slammed its base onto the balcony floor. A visible wave of violet energy erupted from the crystal, but it wasn't aimed to kill. It was a high-pitched psychic shriek, a frequency designed to target the heightened senses of a wolf. The effect was instantaneous and devastating. Every wolf in the hall, Silas's guards, Kale's warriors, even Silas himself, clutched their heads and dropped to their knees with cries of agony. Kale's black wolf form writhed on the floor, whimpering. Only the purebloods, protected by their non-conductive masks, remained standing. Alara flinched, the sound of physical pressure in her skull, but it did not fell her. The ancient magic in her blood, the seal that once suppressed her, now seemed to deflect the worst of the attack. She remained standing, swaying but upright. Valerius's masked face tilted. Interesting. The abomination resists. No matter. Take her. The staff will shatter her mind soon enough. Two hulking purebloods advanced, carrying heavy, rune-etched chains meant for binding. "No!" The roar came not from Silas, but from Kale. Through sheer pain-racked will, he forced himself to shift back to human form, his face a mask of agony. He threw himself between Alara and the chains, taking a brutal punch to his injured shoulder that made him cry out. "You fool," Valerius sighed. "You had her and you threw her away. Your pride makes you useful, but it also makes you pathetic." Alara looked from Kale's bleeding form, putting himself in harm's way, to Silas, who was fighting to rise through the crippling sonic assault. The heat she had locked away surged in response to the threat, mixing with a colder, purer fury. The whispers from the ancient scroll echoed. A shadow tether, maybe exploited, a puppet of great power. Was this Kale's play? A desperate redemption to reforge a connection? Or was he, even now, a potential vector for the purebloods to control her? There was no time to untangle the knot. The chains were coming. The sonic scream was breaking Silas's resolve. She had to act. She stopped fighting everything. The heat, the fear, the confusion. She reached deep into the core of her being, to the place where the girl who scrubbed floors met the wolf of legend. She didn't summon the wolf. She became the bridge between them. Her human form began to glow with an inner silver light. Runes similar to those on her armor ignited on her skin. The air crackled with static. She raised a hand not toward the attackers, but toward the vile, pulsating crystal on Valerius's staff. "You hunt legends," Alara said, her voice echoing, multiplied, as if many spoke through her. She didn't blast it. She unmade it. With a thought, she inverted the energy frequency. The violet screech cut off abruptly, replaced by a profound, deafening silence that was somehow louder. Then the crystal itself shattered with a sound like a universe breaking, the recoil of energy throwing Valerius back against the wall. The relief for the wolves was immediate. Silas surged to his feet with a vengeful roar. His onyx guard recovered with terrifying speed. Valerius staggered up, his serene mask now cracked. Impossible! The suppression formulas. "Your formulas," Alara said, the silver light slowly fading from her skin, leaving her trembling but clear-eyed, "were meant for a sleeping wolf. You are too late. I am awake." Silas was at her side in an instant. "Finish them," he ordered his guards, his eyes never leaving Alara, checking for injury. But Valerius was not done. As his remaining forces were cut down, he pulled a small device from his robe. "A setback. The signal is sent. The world now knows the abomination lives. They will come. They will all come until your light is extinguished." He smashed the device at his feet. A cloud of black smoke erupted, and when it cleared, he was gone. A teleportation trick. The hall fell silent, save for the moans of the wounded. The pureblood assault was broken, but the threat was now broadcast to the world. Alara's legs buckled. The cost of wielding such focused power was a deep, soul-deep exhaustion. Silas caught her. Kale limped forward, his expression unreadable. He looked at Alara, then at Silas holding her. The ghost of the old bond, the shadow tether, gave a faint, painful twinge in Alara's chest. "You saved my life," Alara said to him, her voice quiet. "I told you why," Kale muttered, avoiding her eyes, clutching his bleeding shoulder. "Pack honor." "There is no honor in lies, Volker," Silas said, his voice cold. "You fought well, but your reasons are your own. The citadel is secured. You and your wounded will be treated. Then you will leave." Kale gave a short, sharp nod, a defeated alpha. He turned to go, then paused. Without looking back, he said, "The scroll and the archives, about the Argentum bond, it's not complete. The Master Elder has the missing pages. He always has." Then he was gone, swallowed by the shadows of the hall. Alara's breath hitched. The Master Elder, Mordrin, the blind head of the council, the one who called for the trial of blood, the one who held the laws. Silas's grip on her tightened. The battle for the citadel was won, but a new, more insidious war, fought in shadows and ancient scrolls, had just begun. The aftermath of the attack was a somber affair. The Citadel's healers worked tirelessly, their halls smelling of antiseptic and bitter herbs. The obsidian fang wounded were treated without fanfare, and under the watchful eyes of the Onyx Guard, they departed as the first snows of a new storm began to fall. Kale left without another word, a brooding, wounded figure disappearing into the white. Alara spent 2 days in a deep, magic-induced recovery sleep. When she woke, the immediate exhaustion was gone, replaced by a heavy understanding. The purebloods were not a vague legend, they were real, organized, and they had just declared open season on her life. Silas was often absent, dealing with the security fallout and the political tremors sent by the attack. When he was with her, he was focused, teaching her control with a new intensity. They worked not in the grand hall, but in a sealed, warded chamber deep underground. The power you used against the crystal was instinctual, a reflex, he said, pacing before her. Your magic is not just for destruction, it is for perception, for protection. He held up a simple stone. Feel its structure, not with your hand, with your spirit. Find the weak point, as you did in the wall, but this time, mend it. Ilara focused, reaching out with a new sense that felt like a silver thread extending from her core. She found the microscopic fracture in the stone. Instead of targeting it as a flaw, she poured a gentle stream of energy into it, envisioning the crystal lattice knitting back together. A faint silver light glowed at the fracture line, and when it faded, the stone was whole, stronger than before. Good, Silas said, a hint of approval in his eyes. Now a more complex test. He gestured to a locked iron box on a pedestal. Inside is a parchment. Read it without opening the box. This was harder. She had to push her perception through the dense metal, feeling the grain of the paper inside, the faint residue of ink. Letters swam in her mind's eye, blurry and backwards. Binding Val. 7th moon. The effort gave her a piercing headache and the connection snapped. It's difficult. It should be. You are learning a language your soul has always known, but your mind has forgotten. Patience. He paused. The Council of Elders has requested a formal audience tomorrow. They have questions about the pureblood attack and your status. A chill that had nothing to do with the underground room settled over her. Mordrin, Kale said he has the missing pages of the Urgentum scroll. I know. I have had the archives scoured. The scroll we saw is a copy. The original, with its complete rituals and laws, is in the possession of the Master Elder, as per tradition. He has not offered it. Why wouldn't he? Ilara asked. If it holds the key to severing any leftover bond or understanding my magic. Silas's expression was grim. The Council of Elders value stability above all else. For centuries, stability has meant the traditional pack hierarchy. You, Ilara, are a revolution, a silver wolf outside the hierarchy, allied with the Shadow King. You represent a shift in power they cannot control. Some on the council might see the purebloods as a radical evil, but they might see you as a dangerous unknown. So they might withhold knowledge that could help me just to keep me weaker, more manageable? It is a possibility we must consider. The audience chamber the next day was smaller than the throne room, but no less imposing. The 5 elders sat on a high bench of dark wood, with Mordrin at the center. Their gray robes seemed to absorb the light from the torches. Queen Ilara, Mordrin began, his blind eyes level with hers. The act of a war at Northern City is an act of war. The purebloods have been a nuisance in shadows for generations. Your awakening has brought them into the light, with unprecedented boldness. Some might say you are a catalyst for chaos. Ilara stood straight, feeling Silas's steady presence beside her. I did not ask for this power, Elder. I did not invite the attack. I am a target, not a cause. Yet the effect is the same, another elder said, a severe woman named Lenore. Your very existence disrupts the old orders. The trial of blood settled the Volcar claim, legally, but it did not settle the question of your place. A wolf with no pack, bonded to no alpha, but standing beside a king. It is an anomaly. The old laws have provisions for the Argentum line, Silas stated, his voice resonating in the quiet room. They were sovereign. They answered only to the moon goddess and their own conscience. Provisions that are ancient, untested, and incomplete. Mordrin replied smoothly. "The original texts are delicate, their interpretations debated." He steepled his fingers. "We propose a period of observation, under the Council's guidance, to ensure your integration into our world is stable, and to determine how best to use your gifts for the benefit of all Pax, not just the Northern Citadel." It was a polite trap. House arrest with a pretty name. They would study her like a specimen, drip-feed her information, and bend her to their vision of stability. "My place is here, learning to control my power with the king," Ilara said, keeping her tone respectful but firm. "The pureblood threat is to all. Should we not focus on that?" "The council will determine the focus," Lenore said coldly. "Your power is immense, child, and raw. Left unchecked or guided by a single powerful interest," her gaze flicked to Silas, "it could become a greater threat than the purebloods. We must be cautious." Silas took a half-step forward, a silent warning in his stance. "Are you accusing the crown of malign intent?" "We accuse no one," Mordrin said, raising a pacifying hand. "We only seek balance for the good of all. We will retire to consider the security matters, but on the matter of the Argentum, our proposal stands. We will require your answer in 3 days' time, Queen Ilara." The dismissal was clear. As they left the oppressive chamber, Ilara felt a new kind of shackle tightening, not of iron, but of politics and ancient suspicion. That night, unable to sleep, Ilara wandered the Citadel's vast library. The answer had to be here somewhere. If Mordrin would not give her the original scroll, perhaps she could find clues in other texts. She was tracing a finger along a shelf of brittle genealogical records when a soft voice spoke from nearby an aisle. "Seeking answers in the dark, little sister." Ilara spun, leaning against a bookshelf with a woman she had never seen before. She was tall and willowy, with hair the color of ashes and eyes of a startling clear blue. She wore the simple gray dress of a Citadel scribe, but her posture was too elegant, her gaze too knowing. "Who are you?" Ilara asked, her senses on high alert. She felt no immediate threat, but the woman was other. "A friend, a keeper of forgotten stories. You are looking for the Verdantia Codex, I presume, the only other text that references the Argentum binding rituals." Ilara's heart jumped. "How did you—" "The scroll in the archives is a copy, yes, but the scribe who made that copy 400 years ago was meticulous. He kept a personal journal. He hid it." The woman's lips quirked in a faint smile. "It mentions the codex and where the original scroll's missing pages were meant to be stored before they were diverted." "Diverted by who?" Ilara whispered. The woman's blue eyes held hers. "Balance is not achieved by hiding truth. It is achieved by understanding it. The Verdantia Codex is in the Starfall Temple, in the neutral territories. It is a book of living magic. It cannot be copied, only read. It will have the answers you seek about your bonds, your power, and the true reason the purebloods fear you." She pushed off the shelf. 3 days is not much time. The journey is long, and the temple guardians do not welcome just anyone. "Who are you?" Ilara asked, more urgently. The woman faded back into the shadows between the shelves, her voice a mere whisper in the air. "An ally from a time before shadows and kings. They call me Lyra." And then she was gone, leaving only the scent of old parchment and frost-kissed lilies. Ilara stood alone, her mind racing, a mysterious ally, a hidden temple, a book of living answers. It was a path fraught with danger, outside the council's control, outside even Silas's protection. But it was a path towards truth, not controlled ignorance. She had 3 days before the council demanded her submission. It was time to stop asking for permission and start seeking her own destiny. The decision was a stone in Ilara's gut. Telling Silas was the hardest part. She found him in the war room, studying maps with his captains. "I need to go to the Starfall Temple," she said without preamble, her voice cutting through the low murmur of strategy. Silas looked up, his expression unreadable. The captains fell silent. The temple is in the Whispering Woods, beyond the council's reach and my direct protection. It is a 3-day hard ride through contested territory. Why? The answers about my bloodline, the complete rituals, they're there, in a book called the Verdantia Codex. A source told me. What source? His tone was sharp. She called herself Lyra, a scribe, but she wasn't just a scribe. Silas's eyes darkened. Lyra is a ghost, a name from children's tales, a spirit of the library, they say. She is not a source, she's a phantom. She knew things, Silas. Things about the hidden journal, about the missing pages. The council is offering me a gilded cage. This is offering me a key. He studied her face, seeing the determination there. He dismissed the captains with a wave. When they were alone, he leaned on the map table. It is a risk of monumental stupidity. The purebloods have just attacked us. They will be watching. The woods are full of rogue wolves and older things. The temple guardians themselves are unpredictable. Staying here is a risk too, a risk of becoming a tool for the council, a risk of never understanding what I am, of always having this shadow hanging over me from the past. She stepped closer. I spent 19 years having my choices made for me. I will not start again now. A long, tense silence stretched between them. Finally, Silas let out a slow breath. If you are set on this path, you will not go alone. The council will notice if you leave. I will not be the one going with you. Alara blinked in surprise. An hour later, she stood in the Citadel's lowest stable, dressed in sturdy traveling clothes, her moonstone sword at her side. With her were 2 of the Onyx Guard, Orion, a quiet, grim man with eyes that missed nothing, and Talia, a fierce woman with a scar across her cheek. And to her astonishment, a third figure leaned against a stall, arms crossed. Kale Volkar. He had changed into practical leathers, a heavy pack at his feet. He looked at her defiantly. Don't look so shocked. The Whispering Woods border my territory. I know the safe paths. And it seems my continued existence is tied to yours until certain matters are resolved. He tapped his chest, where the echo of the shadow bond still faintly pulsed. I did not ask for you, Alara said coldly. You didn't ask for any of this, Kale shot back, but I owe a debt. For my blindness, for nearly getting you killed by purebloods. Consider this repayment. After this, we are square, and you will never have to see me again. Silas stood at the entrance to the secret tunnel that would lead them out of the mountain. He handed Alara a small, cold metal orb, a signal flare. If you are in mortal danger, break it. It will summon me, no matter the distance or the cost. He looked at Kale, his gaze like flint. You protect her with your life, Volkar. Not for debt, but because if you do not, the purebloods will be the least of your concerns. Kale met his gaze and gave a single solemn nod. No words were needed. The journey began under the cover of a moonless night. The Whispering Woods earned their name by the second day. The ancient trees, their trunks wider than houses, seemed to lean in, their leaves rustling with voices that were just below understanding. The air was thick with magic, old and wild, that made the wolf in Alara stir with both unease and a strange sense of homecoming. Kale proved his worth as a guide, avoiding treacherous sinkholes disguised by moss and steering them clear of territories marked by the scent of territorial rogue alphas. The tension between them was a live wire. They spoke only when necessary, but she caught him watching her sometimes, not with his old possessiveness, but with a complex mix of regrets and a reluctant awe. On the second night, as they camped in a hidden gully, Talia on watch, Orion sharpening his blades, Kale finally broke the silence. The scroll fragment, the one about the shadow tether, I found it in my father's study after you left. He'd hidden it. He knew what you were, and he was afraid of what it would mean for our pack's standing if the truth came out. He thought suppressing you was a mercy. Alara poked the fire with a stick. A mercy that felt like a prison. I know. The admission was quiet. He laughed, denying out. I was raised on his fear, on his pride. I thought strength was everything. I was wrong. He looked at her across the flames. The missing pages, Mordrin has them because my father gave them to him as part of a pact to keep the Argentum problem quiet. The council and my pack have been complicit in hiding you for a long time. The revelation was a punch to the gut. Her entire life, a curated lie by multiple powers. Why tell me now? Because you deserve to know what you're walking into. The Temple Guardians, they're the last disciples of the original Argentum line. They have been waiting for you, but the Council and the Purebloods both have agents who will try to stop you from reaching them. This journey was never going to be just about the woods. As if summoned by his words, a howl cut through the night. Not a natural wolf, but a coordinated hunting cry. Talia hissed a warning from the rocks above. We have company, not rogues, organized, moving fast. The Orion was on his feet, blades ready. Kale shifted in a flash of darkness, the black wolf standing protectively near Alara. From the trees emerged not purebloods in silver masks, but wolves in dark tunics, marked with a sigil Alara didn't recognize, and stylized eye. Council enforcers. Alara Vance, their leader called, a cold-eye woman, by order of the Council of Elders, you are to return to the Citadel immediately for your own protection. Do not make this difficult. My protection or your control? Alara called back, her hand on her sword. The world is not safe for one of your power. The Council seeks only to guide you. She is under the protection of the Shadow King, Orion stated, his voice deadly calm. The King's jurisdiction does not extend to Council decrees for the greater good. Stand aside. Kale's black wolf snarled, a clear answer. The lead enforcer sighed. So be it. The fight was swift and brutal. The enforcers were skilled, but they were up against two Onyx Guard, a battle-hardened alpha, and a silver wolf who was quickly learning not to hesitate. Alara fought in human form, her moonstone blade moving with a grace she didn't know she possessed, guided by instinct. She disarmed one enforcer, using the flat of her blade to knock him out, rather than kill him. But as the last enforcer fell, a new scent hit the air, chemical, sharp. A cloud of sleeping gas billowed from a shattered vial at their feet. Talia and Orion coughed and slumped. Kale's black wolf wavered, his legs buckling. Alara held her breath, backing away, but a figure dropped silently from the trees behind her. A cloth, soaked in the same chemical, clamped over her mouth and nose. The last thing she saw before darkness took her was the serene, smiling silver mask of Valerius, the pureblood leader, leaning over her. His distorted voice whispered, "The Council plays its games, but we are the surgeons, and the abomination must be cut out." Consciousness returned to the sound of dripping water and the smell of damp earth and cold metal. Alara's head throbbed, and her wrists were bound behind her back with thick, rune-etched manacles that hummed with a nullifying magic, stifling the connection to her wolf. She was in a crude cage of iron bars, set in the center of a natural cavern. Similar cages held Orion, Talia, and Kael, who was back in human form, unconscious and bleeding from a fresh cut on his brow. Across the cavern, Valerius was directing his masked purebloods, who were setting up strange arcane devices, crystals on tripods, braziers burning with green flame. "You're awake. Good." Valerius approached her cage, his masked face tilting. "The suppressors are strong, are they not? A lovely invention. We've had centuries to prepare for the return of your kind." "What do you want?" Alara's voice was hoarse. "To study you, to understand the corruption in your blood, and then to excise it from this world, permanently. But first, we need you pliant." He gestured to a device being wheeled forward, a chair of dark metal studded with needles and more crystals. "That will siphon your power, drop by drop, until you are weak enough for the final procedure." Fear, cold and sharp, pierced her. This was not a battle, it was a dissection. Orion stirred in his cage. "Touch her, and the king will raise your entire cult from the earth." "The Shadow King is busy fending off the Council's political assault," Valerius said dismissively. "He has no idea where you are, and soon there will be nothing left to find." Kael groaned, coming to. His eyes found Alara's, then the chair. Understanding and fury dawned in them. Valerius, you snake! You promised me the means to sever the bond cleanly. You said you had the ritual. Alara's breath caught. What? Valerius laughed. And you, the proud alpha, believed me? You were a useful idiot. Your desperation to be free of your mistake made you lead her right to us. The safe paths you took, we mapped them years ago. The betrayal was a physical wound. Alara stared at Kael, who looked back at her, his face a ruin of shame and horror. Alara, I thought... You thought of yourself, she whispered, the last faint ember of any sympathy for him dying out. The purebloods opened her cage. Rough hands dragged her toward the chair. She fought, but the nullifying manacles made her weak as a kitten. The cold metal touched her back. Suddenly, the entire cavern trembled. A low, resonant hum filled the air, not from the pureblood devices, but from the very stone. The crystals in the pureblood's devices flickered and went dark. The green flames and the braziers snuffed out. From the dark mouth of a tunnel at the far end of the cavern, 3 figures emerged. They were tall, clad in robes of woven bark and living moss. Their faces were ageless, their eyes pools of calm, silvery light. In their hands they held staffs of gnarled wood that glowed with a soft white radiance. The Temple Guardians. This place is a sanctuary, the lead guardian spoke, his voice like wind through leaves. You defile it with your hatred and your machines of theft. Valerius recovered from his shock. The abomination is a blight. We are cleansing. You are violating an ancient covenant, the guardian interrupted. The Argentum Starfall Temple is sovereign ground. The Argentum air is under our protection. Release her. When the purebloods hesitated, the guardians moved. They didn't run, they seemed to flow across the cavern floor. Their staffs didn't strike to kill, but where they touched purebloods or their machines, the results were decisive. Metal rusted instantly to dust. Men fell into a deep, peaceful sleep. Valerius shrieked, firing a blast of dark energy from his hands, but it dissipated against the guardian's light like smoke in a gale. In the chaos, Alara saw her chance. She focused not on her wolf, but on the manacles themselves. She used the trick Silas had taught her, not brute force, but perception. She found the flaw in the runic sequence, a single glyph out of alignment. With all her will, she poured a pinpoint of her power into that flaw. The manacle on her right wrist cracked open with a sound like breaking ice. It was enough. The nullifying field faltered, her wolf surged forward, not in a full shift, but enough to give her strength. She broke the left manacle and leaped from the chair as a pureblood lunged for her. She sidestepped, using his momentum to send him crashing into the now inert siphoning device. A guardian was suddenly at her side. His silvery eyes looked into hers, and he nodded, as if confirming something. He placed a hand on her forehead. A warmth flooded her, cleansing the last of the drug from her system, healing her aches. Knowledge, not in words, but in pure understanding, flowed into her, the location of the Verdantia Codex within the temple. Go, the guardian said. Your companions will be safe. The book awaits its reader. Alara didn't need to be told twice. She sprinted for the tunnel the guardians had come from, leaving the sounds of the subdued battle behind. The tunnel led upward, winding through the heart of the mountain, emerging at last into the Starfall Temple itself. It was not a building, but a vast, open-aired circle in the crown of the mountain, its perimeter marked by towering rune-carved monoliths. The night sky above was impossibly clear, the Milky Way a river of diamonds. In the center, on a pedestal of living rock, lay a book. Its cover was made of what looked like polished emerald leaves, and it glowed with a soft internal light. The Verdantia Codex. As Alara approached, the book opened of its own accord. Pages, seemingly made of light and plant fiber, turned until they settled. She looked down, and the script, once alien, now made perfect sense. It spoke of the Argentum as the moon goddess's balance keepers, their power meant to heal rifts, to see truth, to protect the natural order of the shifter world. It detailed the true mate bond, not a biological imperative, but a resonance of purpose and soul, a partnership that amplified both to protect the whole. And then she found the page on the shadow tether. Her heart hammered as she read. It was not a true bond. It was a magical parasite formed when a genuine Argentum mate bond was brutally rejected before awakening. It fed on the rejected one's pain and the rejector's pride. It could, as she feared, be used to influence, to drain, even to control. But its weakness was truth. A full, honest accounting of the rejection, given freely by the one who caused it, followed by a ritual of release under the full moon, would sever it completely. But there was a warning. If the tether was not severed before the Argentum's first full lunar cycle after awakening, which was in 3 nights, it would become permanent, a chain that could never be broken. 3 nights. She also found the reason the purebloods feared her. The Codex stated that the Silver Wolf's ultimate power was not destruction, but the unmaking of falsehood, the ability to dispel magical corruption, to break manipulative bonds, to reveal hidden truths on a massive scale. To a cult built on lies and genetic purity, she was the ultimate weapon against everything they were. A noise made her look up. Kale stood at the entrance to the circle, limping, his face bruised. The guardians must have freed him. He looked at the book, then at her, his expression raw. "Did you find it? The way to cut me out of your life for good?" Ilara closed the codex. The light faded. "Yes, but it requires something from you, Kale, something you may not be capable of." "Name it." "The truth. The whole unvarnished truth of your rejection. Not for an audience, not for pride, for release. And you must give it freely." He was silent for a long time, looking at the stars. "I was afraid," he said finally, the words ripped from him. "I saw you, on your knees in that dress, and I felt the bond, and all I could think was that the mighty Kale Volkar, alpha of a great pack, was destined for a servant, a wolfless girl. My father's voice was in my head, whispering about weakness, about legacy. I chose my ego over the moon goddess's will. I chose to destroy something beautiful because I was too small to understand its worth. I rejected you because I was a coward." The words hung in the sacred air. Ilara felt the shadow tether in her chest quiver, like a string plucked. "That," she said softly, "is a start." A guardian appeared beside them. "The purebloods are routed. Their leader fled, but he will return with greater force. You must perform the severance ritual before the full moon, and then you must leave. Your presence here puts the temple at risk." Ilara looked from the guardian to Kale, to the codex, and then to the brilliant, waiting moon above. The path was clear, but the timing was impossibly tight. They had to get back to the northern citadel's hidden postern gate, just as the first sliver of the full moon crested the mountains. They had 1 night. The return to the northern citadel was a grim, hurried journey. The temple guardians provided them with swift, silent stags, great stags that moved through the whispering woods like ghosts. Orion and Talia, recovered from the gas, rode with vigilant tension. Kale was a silent, brooding presence, the weight of his confession hanging between them like a shroud. They arrived at the citadel's hidden postern gate just as the first sliver of the full moon crested the mountains. They had 1 night. Silas was waiting, his relief at seeing her safe warring with a cold fury at the news of the ambush and Kale's unintended betrayal. He listened in stone-faced silence as Ilara explained what the codex had revealed, the nature of the shadow tether, the ritual for its severance, and the pureblood's true fear, her power of unmaking. We perform the ritual at moon zenith in the circle of ice. It is a place of power and judgment, appropriate. His gaze fell on Kale. You will speak your truth there, and if there is even a hint of deceit, of manipulation, I will finish what the ritual does not. Kale met his gaze, not with defiance, but with exhausted acceptance. I understand. The circle of ice, under the burgeoning full moon, was a place of breathtaking, terrible beauty. The frozen lake glowed with a pale blue light. The stands were empty this time, save for Silas, a few trusted onyx guards, and the necessary ritual witnesses, Lysander, and, to Alara's surprise, the mysterious scribe Lyra, who gave her a small, encouraging nod. Ilara and Kale stood in the center, facing each other. According to the codex, they had to be within the moon's direct light, with no barriers of stone or thought between them. Begin, Silas said from the edge of the circle, his voice carrying on the still air. Kale took a deep, shuddering breath. He didn't look at Silas or the witnesses. He looked only at Alara. I, Kale Volkar, Alpha of the Obsidian Fang, speak now to sever the shadow my pride cast upon you. His voice started rough but grew stronger, echoing in the bowl of ice and rock. I saw you not as a person, but as a reflection of my own inadequacy. I was taught that strength was dominance, that value was lineage. I let those lies blind me to the truth standing before me, a strength born not of bloodline, but of endurance, a spirit unbroken by years of cruelty. I rejected the greatest gift the moon goddess could ever bestow because I was too small, too scared, too arrogant to recognize its worth. I rejected you because I was a coward. My rejection was a lie, a crime against fate and spirit. I renounce it now. I renounce any claim, any echo, any connection born from that act of cowardice. I free you, Ilara, Vance of the Argentum, completely and forever. May the moon witness my truth and sever the chain I forged. As he spoke the final word, a beam of pure moonlight, almost tangible, lanced down from the zenith to envelop them both. Ilara felt the shadow tether in her chest, a cold, clinging vine, tighten in protest, then glow incandescent white. There was no pain, only a tremendous pulling tension. Then, with a sound like a crystal bell ringing, it shattered. A wave of pure, unburdened power washed through Alara, so strong her knees buckled. The silver wolf within howled in triumphant joy. The last vestige of her old life, the last chain to the weak Omega, was gone. She was truly, completely free. Kale gasped, clutching his own chest as if something had been ripped from him too, not a bond, but a burden. He looked up at her, and for the first time there was no possessiveness, no guilt, only a clean, sad peace. It is done. Before anyone could move, a new sound intruded, not a howl, but a shriek of metal on stone. From the cliffs above the circle, dozens of figures rappelled down, purebloods, and at their head, Valerius, his mask now cracked, his robes torn, madness in his eyes. You think a pretty ritual changes what you are? You are an abomination, and tonight, under this full moon, we will drown your light in blood. But he wasn't just looking at Alara. His followers were setting up larger, more sinister devices, cannons of sorts, not aimed at her, but at the walls of the circle itself, at the citadel beyond. If we cannot have her power, we will bury this entire mountain in ice and rock. Let the so-called Shadow King and his mutant queen die together. Silas gave a signal. The Onyx Guards surged forward, meeting the purebloods in a clash of steel and snarls. But there were too many cannons. One fired with a deafening thump, and a projectile of compressed ice and dark energy slammed into the cliff face above the citadel's main gate, causing a landslide. Ilara knew with sudden, chilling clarity, This was not a fight she could win with tooth and claw alone. Valerius was a disease. His lies, his hatred, his corruption were a falsehood woven into magic. Ilara remembered the Codex's words, the unmaking of falsehood. She walked forward, past Kale, past the battling guards, towards Valerius. Silas called her name, a warning, but she didn't stop. "You want to see my power, Valerius? Then see it." Ilara didn't shift. She raised her hands to the full moon and opened herself completely, not just to her wolf, but to the ancient balancing power of the Argentum line. She focused not on the purebloods themselves, but on the corrupt, hateful energy that bound them, that fueled their machines, that twisted their souls. A silver light, gentle as moonbeams but inexorable as the tide, began to radiate from Ilara. It washed over the battlefield. Where it touched the purebloods' devices, they didn't explode. They simply unraveled. Metal rusted to powder in seconds. Crystals turned to harmless dust. Green flames winked out. Where it touched the pureblood soldiers, it did not harm their bodies. It touched their minds. It unmasked the lies. They staggered, clutching their heads, their silver masks falling away to reveal faces contorted not with rage, but with sudden, horrifying clarity, as if they were waking from a long, toxic dream. They looked at their hands, at each other, at Valerius with dawning horror and shame. Many dropped their weapons, weeping. Valerius shrieked, backing away as a silver light approached him. "No, this is not power, this is trickery." He tried to summon his dark energy, but it dissipated like smoke in the radiant light. The light reached him. He froze. His cracked mask fell off. His face, once handsome, was twisted with decades of hatred. The light seeped into him, and he began to tremble violently. What have I done?" he whispered, his voice now his own, stripped of distortion, full of a terrible, empty realization. He saw not an abomination before him, but a young woman holding a mirror to his soul, showing him the hollow, poisoned thing he had become. "My family, my sister, she was like you." The confession was a sob. He collapsed to his knees, not in submission, but in utter, broken defeat. The fanatic was gone, leaving only a ruined man. The battle was over without another blow being struck. The purebloods were disoriented, leaderless, their purpose unmade. The silver light faded from Ilara. She swayed, the effort monumental. Silas was there instantly, catching her. He looked from the scene of peaceful surrender to her face, his eyes wide with awe. "You didn't defeat them," he murmured. "You healed the sickness that drove them." "I unmade the lie," Ilara breathed, exhausted but peaceful. From the cliff top, a new party arrived, the Council of Elders, led by Mordrin. They had seen everything. The old Master Elder's blind face was turned toward the scene, his expression unreadable. He descended slowly. He walked past the weeping Valerius, past the surrendered purebloods, to stand before Ilara and Silas. He bowed his head, lower than he ever had to a king. "The Verdantia Codex spoke true," Mordrin said, humbled. "We sought to control what we did not understand, fearing chaos. We were wrong. The Argentum is not a disruptor. It is a restorer of balance." He straightened. "The Council acknowledges the sovereignty of the Silver Wolf. We rescind our request for oversight, and we offer our resources to help heal the damage our secrecy has caused." It was a victory, the greatest kind. As the elders moved to take the broken purebloods into custody, Kale approached Ilara one last time. He placed his fist over his heart in a formal salute, first to her, then to Silas. "The obsidian fang will trouble you no more," he said. "I will lead my pack differently, because of you." He turned and walked away into the night, a solitary figure finally unburdened, seeking a new path. Under the full, brilliant moon, Silas held Alara close. The shadow is gone. The lies are unmasked. What comes next, my queen? Ilaram looked out at the citadel, her home, and at the stars above. The weak Omega was a memory. The weapon was sheathed. The queen had risen, not on a throne of fear, but on a foundation of healed truth. Now, she said, leaning into his strength, her voice full of quiet certainty, we build.